Where legends breathe again. Eldmyth. In every myth there is a hero. In every legend, a monster. But in the Norse world, there was someone who could be both, often in the same breath. Loki, the trickster, the shapeshifter, the breaker of oaths, and the maker of destiny. He was the whisper behind every disaster, the spark behind every war, and the shadow behind every prophecy. The gods feared to speak aloud. But was Loki truly a villain? Or was he the most misunderstood force in all of Norse creation? Tonight, we step into the chaos he left behind and unfold the truth hidden inside his lies. The mists of time part, not for a hero of gleaming armor and righteous cause, but for a figure woven from contradiction itself. We venture into the frozen, majestic realms of the North, where the very air crackles with the promise of creation and the chill of impending doom. Our story begins not with a god of thunder or a lord of the slain, but with the whisper of chaos, the spark of ingenuity in the darkest hour, the laughter that echoes in the hall of fate. This is the story of Loki. To speak his name is to invoke a storm of images, the sly smile that promises both salvation and ruin, the form that shifts from handsome companion to monstrous horror, the architect of both the gods' greatest treasures and their final, fiery end. He is the weaver of the web, yet also the fly trapped within it. Who is this being who walks the line between Asgard and Jotunheim, between kin and killer, between the preserver of the cosmic order and the one destined to shatter it? To understand Loki is to delve into a mythos where the threads of fate are not straight and true, but tangled, knotted, and brilliantly, dangerously complex. We must look into the heart of the ancient Norse world, a world balanced on the edge of a blade, where the gods are not omnipotent but powerful, not purely good but fiercely striving against the encroaching darkness. And in that struggle, Loki is the wild card, the unpredictable variable that changes every equation. He is the fire in the hearth that warms the hall, and the wildfire that consumes the forest. Our journey starts at the beginning, in the primordial void, to trace the origin of this most enigmatic and essential of figures. Loki's origins are as fluid and ambiguous as his nature. He is often counted among the Aesir gods, a companion to Odin and Thor, yet his bloodline tells a different, more ancient story. He is, in truth, a child of the Jotnar, the giants who represent the primordial, chaotic forces of the world. His father is the giant Farbody, whose name means cruel striker, a being of violent storms. His mother is Laufey, leafy isle, a figure shrouded in mystery, perhaps representing the enduring earth. From this union of destructive force and nourishing land, Loki was born, a being of cunning intellect rather than brute strength. He is not a god of a single domain like the sea or the forge. His domain is the event, the circumstance, the twist of fate. The Prose Edda, penned by the scholar Snorri Sturluson centuries after the Viking Age had waned, codifies these tales, but Loki's presence whispers from older runes and artifacts. He is the necessary outsider, the one who possesses the sharp wit and pragmatic, often morally flexible, solutions that the more honorable but sometimes rigid Aesir cannot conceive. He is the embodiment of wits over strength, a dangerous and invaluable asset in a cosmos teetering on the brink. Scholars debate his role. Was he originally a more straightforward trickster figure, or was his complex antagonistic role always central to the myth cycle? His very name is a subject of contention, possibly related to the Old Norse word loka, meaning to close or to lock, hinting at his role in both sealing and unraveling destinies. He is the lock and the key, the problem and its often terrifying solution. The relationship between Loki and the Aesir is a complex tapestry of alliance, service, and deep-seated resentment. The myths are filled with tales of his crucial aid, interventions that save the gods from their own follies or from external threats. One of the most famous involves the fortification of Asgard, a builder, a master of his craft, who was in truth a giant in disguise, approached the gods and offered to build an impregnable wall around their realm in just 3 seasons. His price: the sun, the moon, and the goddess Freyja. The gods, arrogant and believing the task impossible, agreed, but with a crucial caveat. He must complete the work alone, aided only by his stallion Svadilfari. To their horror, the builder, with his mighty steed, made prodigious progress. The walls rose with astonishing speed, and as the deadline loomed, panic set among the Aesir. They had bargained away the very lights of the sky and one of their most beloved. They turned on each other, seeking someone to blame, their fear a palpable force in the golden halls of Gladsheim. It was in this moment of collective despair that Loki, the schemer, saw an opportunity. The gods threatened him with a terrible death if he did not find a way to thwart the builder. And so, Loki's mind, a labyrinth of clever solutions, began to work. He did not devise a battle plan or a magical assault. He conceived a distraction, a deception that would exploit the one weakness in the builder's seemingly flawless operation. As the final days of winter dwindled, the builder, confident in his victory, worked feverishly. Loki, true to his nature, shifted his form. He became a beautiful, alluring mare, her coat as white as fresh snow, her mane flowing like spun silver. She appeared at the edge of the forest, whinnying softly, a vision of equine perfection. The stallion, Svadilfari, caught her scent and her call. His primal instincts overrode his trained discipline. With a powerful whinny, he broke free from his harness, snapping the thick leather traces, and bolted into the dark woods, chasing the elusive mare. The builder roared in fury and despair, his rhythm shattered, his indispensable helper gone. He chased after his horse, but the night swallowed them both. The work ceased. The wall stood unfinished. The gods, witnessing this, felt a wave of relief so powerful it shook the very foundations of Asgard. They had been saved, not by strength of arms, but by a base, cunning trick. But Loki's story did not end there. He had disappeared into the woods with the stallion, and for a long season the gods heard nothing. When he finally returned, he was not alone. He led with him a strange, gangly foal, a creature with 8 legs, born from the union of the trickster god in mare form and the giant's mighty stallion. This foal, Sleipnir, would grow to become the greatest steed in all the 9 worlds, the 8-legged horse that would carry Odin himself across the branches of Yggdrasil and into the realms of the dead. From an act of sabotage and deceit, a symbol of ultimate power and mobility was born. This is the essence of Loki, a solution that creates a new wonder, a transgression that yields a divine tool, a deed of pure self-preservation that ultimately serves the All-Father. Loki's talents as a procurer of divine artifacts are legendary, yet each acquisition is steeped in risk and moral compromise. The gods' treasures are not merely owned. They are earned through narratives of peril and cleverness, and Loki is often the central actor in these dramas. Consider the treasures of the gods: Thor's mighty hammer, Mjolnir; Odin's spear, Gungnir; Freya's golden-bristled boar; Sif's hair of living gold. These are not just weapons and baubles, they are fundamental pillars of the Aesir's power and identity, and Loki is intricately linked to their origins. His role often begins with a transgression. In a fit of malice or perhaps mere mischief, he shears the beautiful golden hair of the goddess Sif, Thor's wife. Enraged, Thor threatens to break every bone in Loki's body. To save himself, Loki makes an oath. He will journey to the realm of the dwarves, the master smiths of Svartalfheim, and have them craft new hair for Sif, hair that will grow naturally from her scalp, more radiant than before. But Loki's ambition is never satisfied with mere reparation. He sees an opportunity for greater gain. He goads 2 rival families of dwarf smiths, the sons of Ivaldi and the brothers Brokkr and Eitri, into a wager. He boasts that they cannot possibly create treasures more magnificent than those he has already procured, staking his own head on their failure. The stage is set for a contest of divine craftsmanship, with Loki's very life as the prize. The forges of Svartalfheim roared like caged dragons as the dwarves worked their magic. The sons of Ivaldi produced incredible gifts: the spear Gungnir, which would never miss its mark, and the ship Skidbladnir, which could fold to fit in a pocket yet always found a fair wind. For Sif, they spun hair of the finest gold, which adhered to her head and grew as if it were her own. But the greatest test was for Brokkr and Eitri. As Eitri worked the forge, he instructed Brokkr to work the bellows without cease. The first creation was a living boar with golden bristles, Gullinbursti, who could outrun any steed and illuminate the darkest night. The second was a solid gold ring, Draupnir, which every ninth night would drip 8 new rings of equal weight. For the final and most important item, Eitri placed a lump of iron in the forge. He commanded Brokkr to pump the bellows with unwavering consistency. As the hammer Mjolnir began to take shape, Loki, desperate to win his wager and fearing the power of this new weapon, transformed into a biting fly. He landed on Brokkr's eyelid and stung him fiercely. Brokkr flinched just for a moment, interrupting his rhythm. That single moment of distraction was enough. When Eitri drew the hammer from the forge, it was perfection itself, save for one flaw. The handle was crucially, unmistakably short. Despite this, the gods judged the treasures. They acknowledged the hammer's unparalleled power, a weapon to defend Asgard, and declared Brokkr and Eitri the winners. The dwarf, holding his hammer, turned to Loki with a grim smile, demanding his head. Cornered with the victorious dwarf demanding the payment of their wager, Loki's silver tongue became his only shield. "You have my head," he conceded, a sly smile playing on his lips, "but you most certainly do not have my neck. The wager was for my head alone. If you damage so much as a single part of my neck, the terms are broken." The gods, perhaps amused by this legalistic quibble, perhaps recognizing Loki's value despite his trouble, murmured in agreement. Brokkr, enraged but bound by the letter of the law, was thwarted. He could not claim his prize without violating the agreement, but the dwarf was not without recourse. Furious at being cheated, he took an awl and a leather thong. He declared that if he could not take the head, he would at least seal the lips that had spoken such deceit. He pierced Loki's lips and sewed them tightly shut, a brutal and humiliating punishment. For a time the trickster was silenced, forced to endure the physical proof of his overreaching ambition. Yet being Loki, he did not remain bound for long. He eventually tore the stitches out, his words and schemes flowing once more, but the scar, both physical and symbolic, remained. This cycle, transgression, ingenious solution, a new boon for the gods and a subsequent, humiliating punishment, defines his relationship with the Aesir. He gives them their greatest weapons and their most prized possessions, yet he is never fully trusted, never fully embraced, always the outsider whose usefulness is tempered by profound suspicion. The tales of Loki's mischief and essential aid are but the prelude to a far darker symphony, one where his actions spiral from troublesome to truly monstrous, setting in motion the gears of Ragnarok itself. The central tragedy unfolds around the beloved god Baldur the Beautiful, son of Odin and Frigg. Baldur is the embodiment of light, joy, and innocence, so cherished that all things in the world swore an oath to his mother, Frigg, never to harm him. All things, that is, except one, the seemingly harmless mistletoe, which Frigg deemed too young and insignificant to demand an oath from. The gods, in their hubris, made a game of Baldur's invulnerability, hurling weapons and stones at him in their great hall, laughing as they all veered harmlessly away. All except one god did not share in this joy, Loki. He watched the festivities with a growing, gnawing resentment. Perhaps it was jealousy of the universal love for Baldur. Perhaps it was a deep-seated rage at the gods, careless happiness, a happiness from which he, the outsider, was forever barred. Or perhaps it was simply the irresistible urge to disrupt a perfect system, to prove that no order, no matter how seemingly secure, was safe from his cunning. Disguised as an old woman, he went a Frigg and with honeyed words learned the secret of the mistletoe, the one weakness in an otherwise flawless defense. Armed with the knowledge of the mistletoe, Loki sought out Hodr, Baldur's own brother, a god who was blind and thus could not participate in the game. Feigning helpfulness, Loki guided Hodr's hand and placed within it a dart he had fashioned from the mistletoe. "Here," he whispered, his voice a serpent's hiss in the jovial din, "let you two honor Baldur. I will aim your arm." He directed Hotter's throw. The mistletoe dart, small and insignificant, flew through the hall. It struck Balder, and the unthinkable happened. The bright god staggered, his light extinguished, and fell dead upon the floor. The laughter in the hall ceased instantly, replaced by a silence so profound it was like a physical blow. Then a single anguished wail broke the stillness, the sound of a mother's, a wife's, a universe's grief. In that moment the world shifted on its axis. The sun seemed to dim. The gods stood frozen, their perfect world shattered by a single treacherous act. Loki, his deed done, did not wait for the storm of grief to turn to vengeance. He slipped away from the hall, a phantom vanishing into the gathering twilight, leaving behind only devastation and the first, irrevocable step toward the end of all things. This was no mere trick. This was a wound upon the cosmos, a crime so heinous it broke the bonds of kinship and trust forever. The gods' grief for Balder was a tempest that shook the branches of Yggdrasil. Frigg, in her despair, sent a messenger to the underworld, to the goddess Hel herself, to plead for Balder's return. Hel, a daughter of Loki, was cold and pragmatic. She would release Balder, she declared, on one condition: every being, everything in all the 9 worlds must weep for him. The messenger returned with this glimmer of hope, and the Aesir sent out their pleas across the cosmos, and weep the world did. The stones wept, the trees wept, the metals in the earth shed tears. It seemed the impossible condition would be met, but the gods in their search found one being who refused, a giantess seated in a dark cave who called herself Thok. Thok will weep dry tears for Balder, she sneered. Let Hel hold what she has. This giantess was, of course, Loki in another of his cunning disguises. He had robbed the gods not only of Balder's life, but now of any chance for his resurrection. His malice was now absolute, his breach with the Aesir complete and unforgivable. The hunt for the trickster began in earnest. The gods, united in their fury, tracked him across the realms. Loki, knowing his life was forfeit, used all his guile to evade them. He built a house by a waterfall with doors on every side, and he would often transform into a salmon to hide in the water, contemplating the river's flow and the nets his enemies might use. The gods, with Odin's all-seeing eye, eventually found his refuge. Seeing them approach, Loki transformed into a salmon and leaped into the rushing waters. But the gods were prepared. The wise Kvasir, a god of knowledge, devised the first fishing net. They cast it into the water. Loki, as the salmon, hid between 2 stones at the bottom of the river. The net passed over him once, but they weighted it down and cast it again. This time, Loki saw he had to flee. He leaped over the net in a desperate, silvery arc. It was Thor, standing ready in the shallows, who caught the salmon midair, his grip like iron on the slippery scales. The transformation was broken, and Loki stood revealed, captured, and helpless. His punishment for the murder of Balder would be legendary, a torment designed to last until the world's end. They dragged him to a desolate cave, and they took his 2 sons, Vali and Narfi. In a horrific twist of fate, they turned Vali into a wolf, who immediately tore his brother Narfi to pieces. With Narfi's entrails, the gods bound Loki to 3 sharp, cold stones. The bonds were as strong as iron, but they were living flesh, a grotesque and eternal chain. The goddess Skadi, seeking further vengeance for her own grievances, fastened a venomous serpent above Loki's head. The serpent's venom dripped, drop by agonizing drop, onto his face. Yet even in this eternal punishment, Loki is not entirely alone. His wife, the faithful Sigyn, remains by his side. She holds a bowl above him, catching the relentless drops of venom. Her love is a small, flickering candle in the overwhelming darkness of his torment. But when the bowl fills to the brim, she must turn away to empty it. In those moments, the venom falls unimpeded onto Loki's face. The pain is so excruciating that he convulses violently, his thrashing so powerful that it causes the very earth to shake, the Norse explanation for earthquakes. This image is one of the most powerful in all mythology. The bound god of fire and chaos, suffering an agony that reverberates through the world itself, attended only by love that can never fully shield him from his fate. Here he lies, not as an active trickster, but as a seismic force of suffering, his pain a physical part of the world's functioning. He is imprisoned but not inert. His torment is a constant, rumbling reminder of his crime and his power. He waits, festering in the darkness, his mind undoubtedly turning over schemes and hatreds, biding his time until the prophecies unfold. For the bonds that hold him are not eternal. They are tied to the fate of the cosmos itself. The prophecies speak of a time when the bonds will break, when Loki will slip his ghastly fetters and lead an army of the dead and the damned in the final battle, Ragnarok. He will steer the ship Naglfar, constructed from the untrimmed fingernails and toenails of the dead, a grisly vessel carrying the inhabitants of Hell's realm to the battlefield of Vigrid. He will be free, not redeemed, but unleashed, his centuries of pain and rage fueling his final, destructive campaign. He will meet his old adversary Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, on that final plane. The two, eternal opposites, the guardian of order and the harbinger of chaos, will face each other in a duel to the death, and in that cataclysmic clash they will slay one another. Loki's story, which began in the primordial void, finds its brutal, fiery conclusion in the twilight of the gods. He is not a devil figure in the Christian sense. He is a necessary component of the Norse cosmic cycle. Without Loki, there is no spark, no change, no catalyst. Without his cunning, the gods would lack their greatest treasures. Without his malice, the world would not be propelled toward its necessary, destructive rebirth. He is the flaw in the system that makes the system dynamic, the chaos that gives meaning to order, the fire that both destroys and clears the way for new growth. Loki's legacy is as complex and enduring as the myths themselves. He slumbers in the modern imagination, a shapeshifter who has adapted to every new era. In the 19th century, Richard Wagner reimagined him as Loge, the clever, fire-born god of his ring cycle, a figure of intellect and cynical realism. In the 20th and 21st centuries, he has exploded into popular culture, most notably in Marvel comics and films, where he is portrayed as a charismatic, troubled anti-hero, a god of mischief struggling with fraternal rivalry and a desperate desire for a throne. While these interpretations soften his more monstrous aspects, they capture his essential charisma and his role as an agent of unpredictable change. He appears in video games, heavy metal album art, and contemporary fantasy literature, a testament to his enduring appeal. He represents the trickster archetype that exists in every culture, the coyote, the raven, the spider, but with a uniquely Norse depth and darkness. He is the question mark in the margin of the cosmic text, the character who forces us to ask, is chaos a destructive force, or is it the very engine of story, of change, of life itself? We are drawn to Loki because he embodies the parts of ourselves that are clever, rebellious, and unbound by convention, even as we fear the consequences of such freedom. So we are left at the end of our tale not with a simple moral, but with a profound and unsettling ambiguity. Loki, the shapeshifter, the boundary walker, the father of monsters and the savior of gods, defies any final judgment. He is the laughter that dies in the throat when the joke goes too far, the brilliant idea that saves the day but costs a piece of your soul, the fire that you cannot live without but can never truly control. His story is a reminder that myth is not a simple fable of good versus evil, but a complex, often brutal exploration of the forces that shape existence. He is woven into the fabric of destiny, a thread of brilliant, dangerous red in the tapestry of the gods. As the mists of the ancient North close around his memory once more, we are left to ponder the Loki within our own world, the chaotic events, the clever deceptions, the unforeseen consequences that twist the path of our lives. He is the agent of change, for better or worse, and his legacy is the eternal, unsettling, and utterly compelling truth that nothing, not even the divine order of the universe, is ever truly safe from a good story or a bad joke. And so, the echo of his name remains, a whisper on the wind, Loki. Another legend fades, but the next awaits. Like this video, subscribe and continue the journey through myths.